Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Rimshot, the Drummers Podcast. And this is actually a new thing because I'm making this part of the Muse to Music podcast. So I have that as my umbrella type of thing with this particular channel. So I have a very special guest today that I will introduce to you is Seth Mckenzie Long. Welcome, Seth. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm great.
Awesome. We've been trying to do this for a while and we're finally doing it. And Seth is an undisclosed location that would be a huge favorite place for Neil. And we're going to talk about drumming today, being at the Drummers Podcast. Look at that. Amazing. So
Stupid, man.
it's really,
Stupid. It's so
yeah,
good.
I'm very envious and jealous right now. So,
Yeah.
but very cool. But yeah, Neil Peart would be totally cool with that environment for sure. And we're
I
going to
said pert
discuss
today.
what's
I
that.
said pert today. I
Yeah.
said pert today. So I get it.
Exactly. Yeah. So before we started, we were talking about drums and drumming, and my first love is drums. Hence this podcast. I want to really discuss drumming with drummers doing things on the drums, of course. And I was just talking about how I used to flip through the Sears catalog and looking at the huge drum sets. Being inspired by Peter Criss initially with all his drums and having all that going on and fantasizing about my huge drum set behind me as a 13-year-old. And then, of course, time wears on and you discover other drummers that you really even bond more heavily with. And for me, that was Neil Peart. And I'm sure for Seth, it's the same thing. And we will definitely be talking about that today on this podcast. So I have some questions prepared and I want to kind of get into it. And I guess without further ado, I can just jump right on in. Do you want to add anything before we start, Seth? Or
Just one thing that I noticed, we were talking about Peter Criss earlier, and you were like, man, that huge drum set, and I heard his solo, but then I heard Exit Stage Left, and I was like, oh my God, I'm done with Peter. Or not like that, or that's rudimentary, right?
right.
It's interesting because yes, that happens, right? But then time goes on and you hear another drum solo from someone like Mike Portnoy, right? Which at the time was very uncouth. Like it was like, hold up, he's doing some crazy shit,
Mhm.
crazy stuff. He's doing some
Different.
crazy stuff. And this may, hold on. My point being is we held on to Nil. It didn't matter who came after, it didn't matter how good they were,
Mhm.
because there are Dave Weckl, Steve Smith, Vince Colaiuta, Carter Beauford, the, Josh Freese. I mean, there are Dave Grohl. I
Yeah.
mean, you got, and I know I'm leaving out a million brilliant drummers. The point is that what Neil did on the kit was so special,
Yes.
and how he played it, and who he was, and how he carried himself
Yeah.
was like different.
Yeah.
That's what was different. So it was just, what a special drummer.
Yeah.
So that's all. That's like when I was seeing that little comparison, like you were so quick to move from Peter Criss to Nil, but it wasn't because the drum solo was lacking
Right.
or the drum set was lacking.
Right.
It was because it was Neil.
Yeah.
That's Neil Peart right there, bro. Like,
Mhm.
oh my God, like this guy. Like I'm nervous around of like talking about him,
Yeah.
just kind of like he's gonna deconstruct everything I'm saying, and
No,
he's
it's
gonna
funny.
like think into it, So
It's
that's
just funny. Like it's like not that I don't like Peter at all. I think he's great. For what he does. He
of
does
course,
he does the best stuff for that band. And I don't want to go into hierarchies of who's better and whatnot. Everybody's got their contribution to the bands that they're in. So I think for what Peter did with Kiss, what Neil did with Rush, it's like it's the same kind of utility that what he creates with Neil specifically, because we're talking about Neil today a little bit or a lot.
yeah,
So what he did was completely apt for that music. And it's like you couldn't think of anything else or have anybody else playing, so to speak, in that band at that time, apart from John in the beginning, John Rutsey. He just did what he did and it just catches your ear. And that's the thing too. Certain players will catch your ear and go, what's going on here? So, and all the drummers
yeah,
you mentioned, Wecko, Beauford, I mean, each of those guys has a certain thing that catches your ear and you gravitate and you start picking up things, and then you learn the
Yeah.
lineage. Okay, this person inspired this person, this one, and you go down the train, and that's a really great process because you discover all this other stuff. And for us with Neil, just has that huge impact and influence, and sometimes it's hard to describe or put a word to it specifically, like what it was, but we just there was something there going on. Then you learn later on, about his procedure and his process to um, playing what he plays, and that firsthand playing the covers of Rush tunes. So I think we can probably even jump into that, and we will. So I guess what we could probably do, maybe just jump into the very first query, so to speak. So part of the Muse is why the drums. So this could be split into two different categories. We have the Muse and then we have the music. So there's going to be two little bits here, sort of getting into the Muse, so to speak, of like what it was the inspiration to arrive at Neil, so to speak. So why the drums, and what was the defining moment when you knew drums was going to be your thing?
There was no defining moment per se. Uh, I just remember, I don't remember. My dad was a huge Rush fan, huge Yes fan. So I'm in the car seat. He always tells me this. He's like, Seth, I was born in 87. And my dad, like, Hold Your Fire, Power Windows, those are his, right? Those are his albums. Like, he was a weird 80s Rush fan. And he's like, the earlier stuff's good. He's like, it's good. He's like, but the 80s stuff, that's he's like, that was it. That was the jam. And I'd hear these songs like territories and some of these other songs that would start off with these like really just oddball, very, I don't want to say effeminate, but just very not typical. And I'm thinking of my dad as masculine. I'm like, Dad, you're my dad. You're like big. You're like whatever. But then I'd hear these songs, and he says that I was listening to Hold Your Fire in a car seat. That's what and this was back when there was just a CD or at that time eight tracks or tapes
Cassettes.
or whatnot.
Yeah.
So cassettes. Yeah. So you were just listening to one thing. It was not. There was radio had what it had, but that didn't interest my father. So we were listening to, I say we, me and him. Yes, Rush, Pete Travers, Pat Travers. No, Peter Travers. Maybe Pat Travers. Not sure.
Yeah.
Point being is, yeah, exactly. Also ZZ Top.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, and these weird tunes that didn't really settle well, and I don't know. I think that kind of changed me in a little bit growing up to hear and see the world um, through Rush, kind of, which is wild to say. It's wild to say, and I'm not putting anything on that band per se, but it is wild when you are introduced to a band like that at such a young age and kind of because my dad was a painter, and he didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of money, and so when he went to work, I went to work, and I was with him, and just hanging out, and I just like to beat on things. And I remember like begging him at 12 years old, like, Dad, I want a drum set. Like, I want to play drums. And he was like, well, you need to join band. You need to join band. I said, Dad, I can't join band. I don't know how to play anything. How do I, like, what are you talking about? Anyway, so him and Mom scraped together what money they had to get me a CB drum set. And it was supposed to be a surprise. And they had hidden it in the garage, but we had a special person that lived beside us at the time. He was like, I don't know if, anyway, the man, he just wasn't right. Bless his heart. Eugene, like that's what he would do. But he was like, you jazz got something in the back for you. Like, he came up and told me, he spilt the beans, and I was like, so I went out there and I looked and I saw there was a drum set. And like, I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm I was just I was so like happy. And so when he came home that night, like I looked at him, I was like, Dad, I already know, bro. I already see the set. So anyway, they bring the set in, and then that started this love for drumming ever since, because I was hitting magazines. I mean, I'm telling you, I was really into it. And this is right around the time that Work in Progress is coming out.
Oh
So,
yeah, right.
and of course, exactly right. And I remember like every night I would listen to La Villa, you know, Hemispheres. That was huge. My dad had a Technics record player, so and he had all the albums which he loved, but he loved Russian, yes, and of course, and then I remember this other band. It was like Atlantic Rhythm Section, and there was a song on there that was just so freaking good, man. I mean, my dad liked some good jams, you know, but you then wonder, like, well, was I just predisposed to it or what? So I mean, you kind of ask, like, what was the muse or what was the music? Um, I guess my dad, in some ways, I don't want to say the muse, but kind of, because every time I do something, he always tells me, do it right. Just do
Hmm.
it right and don't BS me. Don't BS me. Like that's my dad's big thing. Like just don't BS me. Just tell me what it is. And so, I really I really like Rush from the beginning was always like I've always been a Rush fan. Like everybody who lives around me can tell you that. Like I've always been that Rush guy. And I joined a metal group and I was playing drums and they were a really good group. It was called Gollum. It was insane that they asked me to play drums. Their drummer had passed away at the time.
Oh,
But I always just wanted to do Rush drum covers. I swear to God, like even in early 2000s or whatever, like I never really cared to meet any kind of or to play with any band or to meet any kind of fame. It was just more or less like I just wanted to play Rush. It's like it. And I hate that about myself sometimes. I really do. Like I don't like it sometimes. But in order for you to do a drum cover or for you to like make a drum whatever, you've got to be really feeling the tune. Like I really envy those drummers online that can just come out every week and play a different band. I really do envy them.
hmm.
But there's no band that is deserving of my time to do that. So I know that was a long answer to a very short question, but
No, it's great because that's something too where with the podcast, like hearing your answer is like, something that can inform a lot of people where they're doing a certain specific thing or specializing in something. Maybe perhaps they might have that same sentiment, like, well, I'm just doing this one thing and how these other people do this other stuff. They're more eclectic or whatever the idea is. But I think just the inspiration is the most important thing, in what you do, and you're not even being asking yourself, like, this is what I'm happy. This is where I'm the most happy is playing this style. I'm playing this
yeah,
music from this drummer. And it's
yeah,
not easy, I'm sure. And you can probably attest to, the process of, learning the parts, um, because you always hear these discussions, oh, this drummer could do that and they can do this. I'm like, well, I guess it's subjective in terms of levels of experience and where you're at. But I think, maybe perhaps that's something that people might be thinking where if they're just playing whatever band they chose and they're just playing that, maybe they might feel that same way. And then maybe there's sort of a complementary feel to what you just described of like, sometimes I feel bad just playing this one style, this one guy, and other people play multiple things. I think it's it's an interesting point you
well,
made because
imagine what,
yeah, sorry.
yeah, no, imagine what position that puts me in, kind of feeling like,
Right.
am I an imposter? Am I just a mimic? What am I? But
Yeah.
honest to God, I'm none of those. I'm just doing
Right.
what I want to do.
Exactly. That's the whole thing.
Yeah,
It's like you have something that is inspiring you to do it, to play, So I think once that's there, and even Neil would say, inspiration, he likes that word. It's like, infected with the fire, all you can do is
enthusiastic.
inspire people, right? So that's something that he talks about. And clearly you're there, it's that's the thing. It's like that's your inspiration. Like, I like a lot of different styles, but it's hard to play all the styles. It's like at some point you have to make, a decision on some level of like, okay, well, I need to tackle this and let's get a handle on this. And then I'm proceeding to the next thing. And even Neil was doing the same thing. Even when they were writing their tunes, they were inspired by different players. In the 80s, it was Stuart Copeland, and the list goes on, depending where the band was in their recording process. Things were coming in. Um, African drumming was a thing for Neil for a bit too. So it's like, and that's to get to that point, you have to specialize in that for a little bit, even when Neil was taking drum lessons, the work in progress you just mentioned too. He was with Freddie Gruber and learning how to play. So I hit my cymbal hit. So learning
Hey,
how
it
to
was on
play in
time.
circular. What's that?
It was on time.
I hope so. That's what you
Yeah.
hope for when you play the drums. So very close
Yeah.
proximity though wasn't very good for circular motion, which is what Freddie's whole thing was. So Neil had to sit with that for a while and say, well, what if I come out of this and then what I'm doing doesn't fit the band anymore? So I think there's a symbiosis that what you just described. I think even Neil himself was thinking like, well, if I do all this, relearning and redoing my style and then it doesn't work for the band, I just spent a year doing this. So I think that's the simpatico, I think, of what you just talked about. Neil went through the same thing to a certain extent, I'm sure, with, studying with the teacher, which he hadn't done in like what at that point in 30 years.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the
Well, he was doing
parallel.
pretty good.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, man, I used to really lament the people that would really rail on him because of his time with Gruber and saying that Gruber ruined the best rock drummer. And I just could not empathize with it because I did grow up in a sense with work in progress, but I grew up with the 80s Rush too. And Counterparts. I love Counterparts, Presto, all that stuff. But I get it. Like he was at that point where he felt that he learned as much as he could in that capacity, and he just needed to figure something else out. And I think that's one of the things that was special about the Rush stuff is we never knew really if he was going to come back because we knew he had to be inspired to do it. And he even knew that even if he wanted to come back, he knew that if he wasn't inspired, he couldn't do it. Like even if he wanted to.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's the realization I've come to. It's like as much as I want to do something, if I'm not in it, it doesn't like it's not gonna happen.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And it shows too in the performances, even with the band, they were like, you can tell they're into it. They weren't faking it. There's no artifice there. And even when I watch you play the covers, which we'll talk about in a little bit too, just by your look on your face, there's a so not really a display, but there's an intent there. When I watch you play, of like, getting the right sort of feel, getting the balance of the kit, making sure things aren't dominating each other, everything fits together. Which I just loved. If I have to give you some compliment, that's one thing I noticed off the bat from the playing is that there's that desire to get it right, and to really do justice to the tune. So that's the thing that really was like the thing like we had to talk about this, And when I was thinking about having, guests come on the podcast, that was the one thing when I saw your videos, like we have to do this, like, as soon as we can, because it just really kind of resonated with me because I never tried to play a Rush cover before. I never, when I get back to the kit regularly, that's something I'll give a shot with. I'll probably start with the first record with John Rutsey and then work from there. Because I get to see the evolution of the playing and so on and so forth. So I think that was just an impressive part of what I watched when you're putting these videos up, was that, it's just there's definitely a desire there. I can't say enough. It just was really, I was really inspired, so speaking of inspiration, I think that was something that was really kind of caught me and inspired me. Like, if I'm going to play the drums again, at whatever capacity, if I'm just going to play a couple of bars of a tune, I want to make sure I do it the best that I can and not BS myself, as you just mentioned, your dad saying, whatever you do, just don't BS me. So I had that, I definitely resonate with that mindset for sure. So,
God, man, I can't tell you how much that means to me. I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Because it just means a lot.
I'm glad. I'm glad. You know,
So I
that's
really appreciate you saying that, because that's a hard thing, man. Because you just want to do the shit right.
mhm.
You just want to do it right. It, and dude, I appreciate you saying that.
You got it. I think it's the thing. It's like you can't really fake, you know, your affiliation with something that you really are inspired to do. So I think, you know, it comes across, and that's something that, you know, I'm looking
Ooh.
at the video. I'm like, no, there's nothing, there's no phoniness going on here at all. I mean, you can't. I mean, if you're gonna try to play a Rush tune on the drums, it's like you got to be there, you got to be in it, you know, and it's something you can't just fool around with and, you know, half-ass it. There's no way, because he didn't do it
No,
that
prime
way.
example.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the a lot of people. I'm kind of pulled between this thing here, because it's like on one end, you have the fans, the Rush fans, that if you play a tune, they want to hear the tune. They don't want to hear just one chorus, you know. But on the other side, like, you can't, I can't, I just can't afford the time to do the whole tune. And when I do, it takes so long to do it, to where you would have forgotten what I was doing in the first place. But if you have time to do this stuff, and if you time, but I don't. I'm doing these things on lunch breaks, so, like, I'm really struggling with the end fill of Lock and Key right now.
Okay.
And, like, of course, somebody else would have, or I'm not saying somebody else would have, but I'm just saying, you hear all these top 10 lists and all this BS, and who's the best drummer in the world, whatnot, but you never see the drum covers of Rush done right.
Mm-hmm.
Done right. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for real, for real.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because Neil was a human being that played as a human and did not play necessarily to time. And Geddy and Alex found him, and they locked on that. Like, they were actually playing from Alex's heart. You know, Alex would Alex is the one that constructed those drum beats. Like, Neil was just the one that played them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what really melded that band together, was Alex, which is ironic, because he was the one who got the least amount of credence through this whole thing, which I think in time that'll change.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
there's your lyrics amplification shirt. Yeah, I don't even have one.
right?
I'm a freaking guitar player. I don't even have a shirt yet for
Yeah,
him. So not that he's gonna send
bro.
me one, but I have to go
There,
get it.
I'm telling you, right. Well, it's a good question. Why is Rush not following lyrics amplification?
Hmm.
Why doesn't Rush on the socials follow them? And I'm telling you, I've made this clear. So we're not made it clear, because obviously I don't have to reach. But please God, anybody who watches this podcast, make that clear, because Rush would not be here without him, and it is not acceptable for them not to follow what he's doing.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And they followed Envy of None, so it's like, well, what is this?
Yeah,
I'm not taking away from them. I'm just saying, like, but come on now, let's just be done with this, and let's just follow them. You know.
exactly. Absolutely. I think that'll happen. I think you know, I'll put some links down below to all what we just talked about. Lyrics to
Cool beans,
amplification.
man.
Yeah,
No,
all that stuff, you know. So it's really it's a good point. Definitely, I'm glad you raised it, because I think it's something that you know, there's got to be some more, you know, communication and cross pollination, if you will, I guess, of things and projects and whatnot. I think it's good. It's a good thing. It doesn't
God,
hurt.
that's so wild to use that term, cross pollination.
Yeah, yeah.
No, that was no, remember that band I was talking about, Gollum, that I played
Mhm.
with? One of their songs they put out, that Randy Bly, who is the lead singer of Lamb of God, he did that song with them, Cross Pollination,
Oh,
which is
okay.
just wild that you brought that up.
That's
But
funny.
anyway,
Yeah, I didn't. That was totally
non
unintentional.
sequitur.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Right? Isn't
Yeah.
that wild? That's
Hmm.
nuts, dude. That's nuts.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Yeah.
Very cool. Nice. Yeah. So I think we covered well, I wouldn't say we covered Neil very well, or completely, because there's so much to talk about. I had mentioned too in some of the comments, like, of course, Neil was the inspiration. And then we mentioned some of the other drummers in the beginning, but were there any specific sort of, gatekeepers, so to speak, that got you into your drumming world, or was it pretty much like,
Yeah,
yeah?
well, I'll tell you. I remember going to a G3 concert.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, and Paul Gilbert
Oh, okay, nice.
was the one I went to.
Yeah.
And the drummer for Paul Gilbert, I remember seeing him and just being like, yeah, that's how I want to play. The drummer from, uh, well, he's very similar to the drummer of Rage Against the Machine, just in that very, just, he's just, I mean, these cats that just play with, they just play with drive,
Yeah.
Josh Freese.
Yeah.
I mean, this cat, and it's funny because when Taylor passed away,
Mm-hmm.
which was totally senseless. But on the other hand, I understand completely what happened. And there are some other people in that, not necessarily in that social sphere, but there are other people in that sphere that we look to that are fighting those demons too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unnecessary, but also just kind of necessary. Point being is, I knew Josh Freese was going to take up that role in Foo Fighters from the gate. It was over. Like, I already knew it. There was no one else that was meant for that role.
Mm-hmm.
And they put out these other names, which were all phenomenal.
Sure.
But just speaking to other drummers that I love, I mean, that's one of them. He's just amazing. Like, I like anybody who can put down something and you see it, you feel it, you hear it. They're not necessarily going crazy, but if they need to, they go.
Mm-hmm.
They can do it. Just that kind of reserve is a very beautiful thing. And I think Neil was very good at doing something that seemed simplistic in its own right, but you know that's not the case at all. Go to ACDC, try to play Back in Black. Any drummer watching this podcast, I want you to go try to play Back in Black, and not just generically. I want you to actually be able to do it. Like, be able to know when that bass drum is hitting. That is a hard thing to get into that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's beauty in simplicity. But also how someone plays, not necessarily what they're playing, how they're playing it. Chamberlain is a great example of this. Smashing Pumpkins, amazing drummer, amazing how he can make that bell sing
Mm-hmm.
with that hi-hat just go. I mean, just, and also imagine like playing with Nine Inch Nails sometimes, like
Oh,
just
wow.
that, just being able to, just in being able to lock yourself into a groove. Um, yeah, dude, there are so many people out there. I would just say any drummer that's really special out there, it's not because they can do X, Y, or Z. It's because of how they're doing it, and it's
Mm-hmm.
because of who they're doing it with, and the phrasing and how they incorporate themselves with other people. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
full stop.
Yep. And how they listen, and react, there's a lot of that sort of, um, you know, interplay. You have to think ensembly too when you're working in a band. There's things going on that are around you, like how you react to things too. It's a big, sometimes, even with me having taught certain kids, it's one thing. It takes a while to sort of cultivate that, of like the listening part. Like you're keeping time, but you have to be aware of your other players and what you're doing with them, because someone might do something, and you have to react to that. So that takes some time to get really comfortable doing. And to your point, yeah, it's like when you see certain players, it's like they may not be as technical, but when they play a certain thing, like, can you imagine something else being in there? What they played as the final product, could you hear something else being played there? It's just the appropriate part for the appropriate situation, you know. And from the drummers you
Absolutely.
just mentioned, they do all that. Those, the Josh Freeses, the Brad Wilkes, I mean, the Chamberlains, I mean, they
Yes,
all
Brad
do that.
Wilkes. That yes,
Yes.
yes, Brad Wilkes. Thank you so much for saying his name because I knew it was Brad, but I didn't want to say his last name.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is a demon. That
He's
man is
great.
a demon.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Even Kenny Aronoff, big guys like that. I mean,
Uh,
he's so big into that, of
I
just,
could not sit through his book. I could not sit through his. I tried to listen to his audio or audible book, and I just couldn't do it, man. I mean, and you know what's funny? It's like I liked him.
Mhm.
I like him. Like already off the gate. I don't need to hear him play. Like I look at him, he's got the glasses, bald head. Okay, all right, you already got me. Okay,
Yeah.
but and not just because he's doing that. Obviously, it's because that man has, like all of us, he's got insecurities and he's had to
Mhm.
overcome them. And you know,
Yeah. He's like
don't,
Joe.
don't
He's
hate
like,
on somebody.
yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking of G3, he's like Joe Satriani's twin brother now. They both are bald with
right,
glasses, so
right,
yeah, it's
right.
pretty cool. But
Yeah,
yeah, he's yeah, I mean the list goes on and on. It's amazing stuff. So yeah, that's a good batch of gatekeepers to, get you into what you're doing, It's pretty amazing.
well, they are. It's funny because I don't. You're right. You're right. They are. They kind of are the gatekeepers, and you know what? They deserve it. They put their time in for sure. But Neil
Yeah.
was never like that.
Yeah.
No, it's like Neil was very unattainable in that way, and I don't. He just felt as if he wasn't like when he was done. He's done.
Mhm.
Nope. And God, I understand that. I get that. I think that's one of the things about Neil that everybody like really loved is like that guy. He was a dude, man. He was a straight dude. He was not any of this BS. Now he
Mhm.
liked his things the way he liked them.
Mhm.
And if he's doing his job, he expects you to do yours.
Mhm.
And okay, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a solid guy, and it's like it seems like he had a really solid background too. Working in the family business with the farm equipment and such. So it's like you get certain worth ethic from doing that too. I'm sure, which crept right into his approach to playing. So solid, very solid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You have no idea how. Yep. Yep. That's very right.
yeah, pretty cool stuff. And then I guess we kind of covered some of the bands and drummers that you listened to early on, with Smashing Pumpkins and the list goes on from that. I guess what I could ask you next basically is, I guess when and why were Rush or prior bands mentioned part of your world as a drummer? I think we kind of covered some of it, but is there anything else you can add to that perhaps? Or
Oh, we covered a lot of it before we started recording. We were talking earlier, but my dad, he was into Rush hardcore, man. It was Rush and Yes. He liked Yes more actually, which I couldn't stand Alan White. I mean, I respect him. I like him as a player, but give me give me Bill Bruford any day.
yeah.
Give me that one album they did together. Live. It was like a night with Yes or something like that. Anderson, Wakeman, and Howe,
Mm,
or Anderson, Wakeman, Bruford, and Howe.
right.
And he just had that very. I mean, just and he brought the electric kit out.
Yeah.
I didn't even like electric sets at that point.
Right.
Like, and still don't really to this day. I understand why they're there, but really, if you have an acoustic drum set, um, the reason that we hear a lot of electric sets now in the music we hear, even at the top levels, is because of money. It's got nothing to do with what they would rather use. It's got to do with how many people can actually play it in the proximity of which we're in that we know about. And a lot of people come up with tunes of which they don't have their drummer that can do it. So we're fed this AI generated BS of this very on time, very not in the red zone drum lick that may sound good, whatever. But I have zero fear of AI taking over music or that. I think whatever battles we have to overcome, we're already battling
Mhm.
now. I don't think we have any issues with the future because humans want to hear humans at
Mhm.
the end of the day. All the greatest records that you're listening to that you hold so dear to your heart, they're not time. If you were to chart them out, there's no way they're exactly on time. They're on time in their own way. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Even when you hear Rush, like it's on time, but a lot of that stuff is on the backbeat,
Yeah.
which a lot of people don't really appreciate. You know, if you're trying, let me just say, if you're trying to play Rush, pull your front beat to the back, and a lot more things will make sense rather than start pop boom pop boom pop. You know, do do pop do. You know, just reverse what you think you're hearing. You know, because a lot of times when I fall into grooves with Rush, it's not it's not on time. It's in that weirdness zone.
Yeah.
You know, that's not really on paper. So humans want to go see humans
Mhm.
at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
that's it. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, you don't want someone on a pogo stick, so bouncing up and down, you want
but
that natural thing. And that's the thing that's
yeah,
attractive to a lot of drum parts is, keep banging into this microphone. The thing that people are attracted to is that natural feel, even though it's pushing and pulling, there's an oscillation going on there. There's a waver because, like you said, we're human beings, we're not robots. And
that's right.
we have our own
Well,
natural rhythm inside the heartbeat. I mean, it's fairly consistent, but it does change, and hopefully not with an arrhythmia, so
right.
there you have it. So I totally understand your point.
Yeah, essentially,
Yeah.
staying at. Sorry, I'm having to work things here out myself.
Nice. Yeah, very cool. That's a great answer. I love it. I love it. And I guess the other thing I can mention, or actually not mention, but I will later. I'll mention. But the next thing I want to ask you, a couple things left to ask you about, and I guess the main reason. Oh, I want to maybe discuss the drum studio you have. With whatever you want to relate about the drum studio. I love the whole watching your videos, the whole vibe. I mentioned this to you before we started recording. The whole vibe of the space you're in when you play was really cool. The camera work that was going on too was really good, and the lyrics on screen was pretty cool as well. So there's a lot of nice presentation to what you put out there. So I don't know if you want to discuss maybe a little bit about the studio, because I think you said you mentioned, or in what I've seen is that you also give drum lessons. Is that true, or am I seeing the wrong
Oh,
stuff?
of course. Well, I give drum lessons, yeah. But if I'm giving drum lessons, I find that a lot of people they're not really serious.
Hmm.
You know, you'll ask, or they'll say they want to have a drum lesson, but then ultimately when it comes down to it, and I'm not even saying like they won't pay, they'll pay. They'll pay, but it's almost like they'll pay you to just be like, okay, I had a drum lesson, and I'm just, So yeah, while I will do drum lessons, I'm not going to do it with someone who is just paying me. I just
Right.
can't, because if you're not excited about it, or if you're not trying to get better, I'm not
Right.
getting better, and you're wasting my time. We only have one life
Mm-hmm.
here, and that has made me not a rich man. you know
Yeah.
so that's not a good business move. You need to definitely take in those people that pay you and don't show up and do not take it offensive.
Yeah.
Like, take the money and don't care. If there's one thing I can say to people, take the money and don't care. But I don't want to take someone's money, you know
Yeah.
unless it's my time. Anyway, so what I've done is I've put together a studio to where I can go on my lunch break, which is what I do. Like, I don't have a lot of time. I've got kids, family, mortgage, all that stuff. So I've had to kind of construct a way to be able to go into the studio. It takes 15 minutes to drive there from the job. Go there, turn the stuff on, hit record, play the music in the background, play along to it, record it with the webcam, airdrop it to the phone, go to work, because at this point it's like 30 minutes has passed. So now you got 15 minutes to get back to work. get back to work, and then, cut it up from there. Editing it out wise. And I'll have my phone positioned on one angle and I'll have my iPad positioned on the other. And I'm actually recording through my audio interface and my HD webcam that you actually never see. You'll never see the webcam unless you see like the top angle. That's the only that's what I'm actually recording on. Like when I have that webcam going, that's like however the driver is that I'm able to record. But Rush is, I love Rush, and I started this for a different reason than I continue to. But for me, that's just what I want to do. Yeah, that's how I'd like to spend my lunch breaks.
That's pretty good.
And it's insane when you think about it. Like you think about like why, and it's funny. Like people that work with me, they'll see me like on the timeout clock. Like I'm sitting there waiting for the minute to change because I know like once that minute changes, then I run to the truck. I'm off. I get in there, come to, then put one down and then leave. And so imagine doing all that work, and then you put a video out and it doesn't do anything. It's like, oh God, like what am I doing with my life?
Well, I mean, the fact that you're here,
doing?
yeah, well,
Yeah,
I think the fact that you're here talking about this stuff is good because, that's the thing. I want people to come on and talk about what they're doing and promote that, and then I can do it as in kind, also, make sure people know about what's going on because I think it's a very special thing that you're doing and people need to see it, because it's again,
oh
it's
man,
like,
that's beautiful. Yeah.
Seriously, it's like, that's the thing. It's not about me. It's not about me having a podcast. It's about people who come on and discuss what they're doing so we can share it, and build a community. That's really my hope with all the episodes I've done up to now too, is that you want to have some kind of interaction, some positive. Keep hitting my freaking microphone. I should get back to playing. That's my son. I keep hitting my mic screen here. Get back to
But that
playing.
just means you're enjoying yourself. It's okay.
Yeah. Use my hands, circular motion. So it's something that people need to see it. So my hope for you is that, by doing this, we're sharing the link below to all the videos, or maybe just the channel, or however we share what you're doing down below. People go and check it out. I think it's really important.
Yeah, man. If they want to. Yeah.
Yes. That's the option you have. You can always go and support anybody that's been on, and no exception here for Seth. So it's an important thing. So I'll share some links below in the videos, and you can make comments and whatnot. But that's the thing too. Is like,
are you kidding me? Yeah.
And just the fact you have a studio is great. So.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up because just recently that was kind of shook, but everything's going to be okay, and everything's going to be okay. My point being is this last month has really given me perspective to understand how fortunate I am to have a space that I can go to. And that is something that a lot of people cannot say. There are so many players out there that would love to play, but they don't have the space. They don't have the perceivable time. But let me just give you a little secret. Anybody watching this, your girl, she will never be okay with it. But if you're doing your job and you're doing what you're supposed to do, she ultimately will be okay with it. Just remember that. Like, if there's anything I want to tell someone out there, it's like, do not worry if your girlfriend or your wife is not cool with you going. She's always going to give you shit. But even if she gives you that shit, it's really not real because she has her other things she's doing too. She wants her time alone anyway. But she just has to give you a little crap to where it's like, okay, like I'm giving you shit, but I don't want you here anyway. Like find something to do, But just so that obviously that's something you kind of struggle with too. Like time is the biggest thing. Like even if you've got all the money in the world, you don't. If you don't have any time, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So I mean gosh, dude, that's life. Kind of your give and take, and how much money I've given up, on sales and on this and that to do this. But I've really come to terms with like, it's not because I'm making money. It's not because I want to make money. This is genuinely what I want to do with my life. you know? So, I mean, just, that's just it.
Yeah, it's like an important thing to have the things you want to do in your life and to put that in the course of your day. And time is the thing. It's always, learning how to play, um, having the time for your passions. It's important for everybody. So like even you mentioned before, like, couples giving each other crap about whatever, but it's important that each person has their own thing that they do, because then you come back together and hey, I did this, and you share your stories back and forth. It sounds kind of generic or whatever, but it's really the thing. It's like you want to have those bonding moments, where you have passions that you do, and then you come together and share experiences, and that's something that I think um, can cause a problem if it's not a mutual thing. So the fact that you have a passion and she has her passion, and it's an important thing because it's really how you spend your time. And then when you get back together with your significant other, you have that even more special, you know, bond and shared experiences. It's a really important aspect of any relationship, whether it's a romantic or personal or professional or whatever it is. You have to have those balances, with whatever you're doing and you're passionate about it, where it doesn't overtake, but you have that nice equilibrium.
Well, I'd say too, it's very important to be able to come home and not and be too tired to talk,
Hmm.
and just be okay.
Yep.
And just have like your girl just be like, yo, hey babe, what's up? And just, hey, let's just lay down.
Yep.
Let's just chill. Can we just eat and not speak? Can you just be here? Don't leave, but just can you just be here?
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah.
that's when you really know you got somebody, man. That's like
Yes.
cool and like willing to chill. Just be like, baby, I'm here. And you know what? On the flip side, be there for her too. You
Right.
know. So
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like, music and life imitates, man,
right.
you know?
How wild.
Yeah. It's wild
How
stuff, man.
wild.
Yeah. So I guess one of the final things I can probably talk about with you is there any musical projects, or is it pretty much like what you have going on right now and you're just, you're doing that, or is there any future plans as your
Okay.
drumming progresses? So,
Here's my future plan. I'll be straight up. Here's what I want. Okay. Um, I'm not I'm not even tripping. Okay, but I do want Tenacious D
oh,
to do a Rush tribute concert. I know you didn't think you were gonna hear it. That's because
wow.
I respect, you know, I respect GNA more. Okay. I'll let you do whatever. Not even I'll let you, but just kind of, I get it. But I think Tenacious D is a very special situation to where, and Kyle, especially right now, this is the perfect time. Everybody hates him, or he's dropped by his talent agency. My ass. I mean, Jack would never turn his back on Kyle. Doesn't matter what he says. Those two are straight up, simpatico, and they have to do what they got to do for whatever. But my point being is, I saw them do a rush. I saw them do a rush though, and it was kind of put through the localized rush groups, and we can do better. We can make this a thing. It could, and Jack Black has a very candid relationship with Eddie.
Mhm.
So, and they've actually acknowledged me too. I mean,
Oh,
it's not
nice.
like they don't know who I am. Like, yeah, like we know, like I don't know them, but on social media, they shared one of my posts one time, and I was so like I could not believe it when they did it. Like, it was the only time it ever happened from anyone, right?
Oh, sweet.
Like, because as you may or may not know, it doesn't seem like Getty or Alex are online at all. Or at least they're not in touch with their social groups or their social accounts. It doesn't seem that way.
Right.
It may, I mean, I don't think they are. I mean, but I know Jack is, and I know Kyle is, and I think those two are the ones that could actually like do it in a fun way.
Hmm.
So that's what I want to do, because frankly, I've got now. I'll play with anyone. I'll play with between now and then. I'll do whatever I need to do to make money. Like, straight up, don't get it twisted. If I can play drums and make money, I'm down. Country, rap, does not matter. it doesn't matter if I'm feeling it,
Right.
right? If I'm feeling it, because I've got a job. So it's one of those things like, okay, you asked the question like future projects. If there was a project that came to me that paid, because old girl ain't gonna let me out the house unless it pays.
Right.
Let's just be straight up, you know.
Right.
Um, but if it pays, um, and I want to do it, and it's cool, I would love to do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's cool. But my aspiration in life is to play with Jack Black and Coglass and do this Rush tribute show, and because Getty would show up, Alex may show up too. You never fucking know.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes some of the pressure off the Nil thing. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Because I really, honest to God, Rush is over. Rush is over. And that is a heartbreaking thing to say.
Yeah.
But it is over. The drummer that would replace Nil. You can't.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot do it. But we need to heal. Like us Rush fans, we need to heal too. Don't go on stage with these funky ass Canadian, whatever you're doing. No one wants to see it. Guys, y'all want to play, play. If you don't want to play, but I'm just saying, like, don't feel like you can't go on stage and play Rush tunes. Those are your Rush tunes. You can play them. And Neil himself said, I don't care what you guys do. I want you to be happy. So if they want to do it, great. But I'm not like outside of all of that. I think my generation, my generation, and the generations after me, after all of us, it is important to keep Rush relevant, because if you don't keep Rush relevant, it will go away. If you don't keep playing it, if you don't bring it back up, it will go away. I mean, I really believe that. I really believe that. People have very short memories.
Mm-hmm.
So this music is worth it. This music will stand up. Especially, I mean, this music will stand up. I mean, it'll always be around. I'm just saying, I'd like to get it out to some of the younger folk, especially today, because they need to understand like this stuff has all been done before. This isn't new. You're not the first generation to get hoodwinked, and there's music out there to tell us that. And that's another reason I make sure to put the lyrics. That's like honest to me, like I'll do the drum part, but
Mm-hmm.
then the second laborious act of it is doing the lyrics. That's not easy, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not an easy task to do that. And you have to do it along with how Getty sings them. So it's
Right.
not necessarily linear,
Right.
if you think about it in that way too. But the words, like I don't care if you even like have my video on mute. Just read the words.
Mm-hmm.
Just read the words. And life will become a lot easier to consume.
Yeah.
You'll understand like these lyrics were written in the 80s in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
and they're ringing true today. I mean, like I'm doing Presto right now as a cover, and I'm sitting there listening to the lyrics, and I'm like, let's go. I mean, this is it. Like, if I could wave my magic wand, I'd make everything okay.
Yeah.
You know, or everything all right, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the case may be. It's just like, you know, I don't believe in magic. How's it go?
Yeah. But I know
I don't believe.
I don't believe in magic, but I somehow have a second sight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Second sight. Yeah. So that's it.
Amazing. Yeah, I like the addition of the lyrics because just like his drum parts, he crafted his drum parts. The lyrics, he put that was his whole sort of approach to what he did is the craftsmanship. The idea of being an apprentice and then you have a master you learn from, that kind of thing. So he really spent time crafting it and putting in the finer details because you could hear the drum music, you can hear the drum parts, you can hear the music in general, and you just be hearing a nice rock song, right? but he put some time and attention into those lyrics. So the fact you include those is so good because it's a package deal. It's really that was
you
Neil.
can't do a drum cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do a drum cover of Rush without having the lyrics, in my opinion.
Yes.
You know,
That's what I liked about what you
it
do
just
is that
doesn't.
you have it there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Because in a lot of ways, I think that was Neil's biggest, or actually, in my opinion, I think that was his biggest contribution. His ability to play drums was magnificent,
Mhm.
but that was kind of staged by Alex. Alex would manufacture those drum beats and send them to him. And as
Mhm.
drummers, we rely on those drum tracks. We truly do. We truly do. We want to hear, like, when a guitarist comes up with a guitar riff, drummers need to know, like, what were you thinking when you made that riff?
Mm.
Did you want me to follow you there or not?
Yeah.
Do I, what do you do? So when you send us that, it's at least a good blueprint for us to work off of.
Yeah.
Not saying that Neil played true to that. It didn't matter, but he just understood the blueprint.
Yeah.
So the lyrics, to me, on top of that blueprint he was playing from Alex, is very important for me to kind of put out there. That is, this is why it worked.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
of course, you got Getty, but I kissed Getty's butt for the first year of me doing these drum covers, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give Alex a little love because
Yeah.
Getty, I love you, but you get a lot of love, So Alex, let's go.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like you
Yes.
got to give Alex some love, man.
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah, absolutely, man. He's my guy. That's
Right,
yeah. Yep.
right,
Yep. Yeah,
yeah,
he
yeah, man.
he does second fiddle quite a bit, even though he's a very, um, such
Integral.
a personality, and just the humor and everything else and the way he plays and how he constructs his parts. But yeah, he kind of, you hear a lot about Getty and Neil a lot, not too much about Alex, It's kind of like
Right.
he's there. You can't miss him, but it's like in terms of the profile and the mentions and whatnot, it seems to be very quiet. So I'm glad you said that. It's good.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Mhm.
man.
Nice.
So speaking of ladies,
Yeah, very cool.
that was
I'm
about
so
to kill
happy
me.
that you agreed to do this, and it was a great chat. And I'm really hoping that people get inspired by this. That's why I do it. I want to inspire people. I want people that have inspiration to come on and inspire other people, and it just goes on and on. So I'm really really happy we got to do this. So
Man, I really appreciate, dude. I appreciate the platform to do it. Are you kidding me? Like,
yeah,
this is amazing. I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'm thinking to myself, like, man, this is awesome. Being able to actually conversate about the things I think about so often that I can't relate to anyone else. I really can't, and
yeah,
it's not because it's not valuable. It's just because they don't. It's just not there. And to have someone like yourself, like, appreciate that and generate the space for us drummers to just be seen
mhm.
is very special. And I appreciate that sincerely, sincerely. And I know every drummer before me and every drummer after will feel the very same way.
Sweet. I really appreciate it, and I'm just happy you can share your story and your inspiration and what you're doing. Is there anything you want to include in terms of how people can follow you and check you out?
Yeah, actually, I'm under my name, Seth Mckenzie Long, on Facebook, and then on Instagram, MKSB Studio at MKSB Studio. And sometimes people ask, where did that come from? And this is the God's honest truth, and I'm actually glad you brought that up. I wouldn't be here where I am right now in terms of being able to do what I do without a very few amount of people in my life. My father co-signed for me to get all this equipment, point blank, period. Right. So I was able to go on Sweetwater and finance it and pay, even when my credit wasn't the greatest. And he co-signed for me, allowing me to do that. And that's an extremely crazy, like, people don't, that's awesome. And then you add on top of that a local drummer who's a magnificent player, Tony Mallard, invited me to be in his studio space, to
Wow.
share his space that he already had based on his good reputations. He paid many months that I could not pay. He paid.
Wow.
Okay. So in times where like I don't even know if I can like keep going. You've got these people behind you silently getting
Yeah.
zero adoration, getting zero appreciation. Like, so it's just like, yeah, this is these two people in particular. There are more people, but the reason I call it MKSB Studios, because, and of course, my fiance, you know, if she didn't keep the kids, if she didn't like take care of the house. I mean, I can't believe it. Like, these people make up what I'm able to do. So, yeah, who cares who's watching it, you know, or who sees it, whatever.
Right.
Because no, I got people that are actually like really good people that appreciate and support what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm honored to be here. I'm honored
It's
because
amazing.
it's not just me. Yeah, for sure it's not.
Beautiful. That's great, to have a support system. It's something that really makes it, and the appreciation goes both ways, which is great too. That's a nice part of the whole dynamic, and that's
Yeah.
great. It's really nice stuff. So
Well,
nice.
man, thank you for having me. I'm gonna go eat some food with the kids, and
Yeah. You're wasting away.
you
You
know,
got to get some food going. Yeah.
that's right, man. That's
Yeah.
right.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. And please feel free to like and subscribe. And I will include all the pertinent links below. All the pertinent links below, not leaks, links. And you can check out Seth and all he's got going on. It's a really time well spent if you go there, trust me. So give him some support, please. All right. So thank you guys so much. Stay tuned for the next episode. And we shall talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Take care. Thank you again, Seth. Appreciate you coming. Thank you. Bye.